In West Haven, two people are now safe after their boat capsized. Police were called to the April Street boat ramp last night after learning that two people had gone out on the water and did not come back. Officials started searching both with drones and in boats and eventually found two people more than 2,000 feet offshore. They were both taken to the hospital and thankfully they're expected to be okay.